Hello and welcome to the Authentic Uprising Show. I'm your host, Jill Simons. I am so excited to grow in the radical art of standing in what God says about you with you today. This show is a place where we pour into our concept of who we are, how we've been created with intention by God, and how we can live out of the freedom that He has for us more every single day. Hello, my lovely friends. I am so excited to be talking with you today. My name is Jill Simons. I'm the host here of the Authentic Uprising podcast and show, and I am so excited to share this next guest with you because one of the things that I love about the story she's going to share with us is that it's so relatable. So many people have walked the same road. And what I love is that she is down the road from where you might be right now and really able to speak some truth and some life into what you are dealing with. Kendra Hampton was away from the church as a young person and really went through a process of finding her identity again in God, which you know is what we're always talking about here on the show. And so I cannot wait to share her story with you. So thank you so much, Kendra, for being here with me today.
Hi, thanks, Jill.
So share with us a little bit about, especially as a young person, what your perspective was on God, on Christians, on all of the pieces of the puzzle here.
So I know when I was younger, I craved that relationship with God. I had kind of a chaotic childhood with a parent's divorce and going back and forth between homes, and was looking for that stability, and I knew that it had to be somewhere. But as I moved into my teenage years, going to a non-denominational church, I was starting to feel comfortable, and I was like, okay, I'm finding my space here. And I was hurt very badly by some people in the church that called themselves Christian and followers of God and Jesus. And I wrote it all off. I wrote off everyone and said, this can't be His plan. Why would He hurt me this way if He loved me, was the big question. And I think a lot of people ask that question. It's so common. If He loved us, why would He hurt us? Why would He allow us to be hurt? And I can see now it's a lesson. It's always a lesson to put our faith in Him and not in people. So as I was struggling with this processing of, okay, people can hurt me, but what do I think of God? And I didn't believe in Him. I believed in a spiritual concept. I believed, I was agnostic for a long time. I knew there was something bigger than us. I couldn't get rid of that feeling in my heart, in my understanding. But I struggled with anything that had to do with man because I didn't feel like I could trust it. I didn't trust the Bible. I didn't trust preachers or priests. And I didn't trust Christians. So, yeah.
I feel like that's such a universal, well, that's too broad. I wouldn't say it's universal, but I think it's a very common experience of just this distrust of the people that are obviously acting out of free will and not out of like some imperative from God, where we just, it's like with parents, like as a child, the closest we have to any concept of God is our relationship with either of our parents. And we really give God the attributes that we see demonstrated in these people. And it's a huge wound then to overcome. So how was that? How did God start the healing process in you?
The first experience that is really profound, it still takes me back even thinking about it. I graduated early from my high school and was going to a local college for a couple of prerequisite classes before heading off to a 4-year university. And one of my classmates came in one morning and said, I had a dream about you last night, and Jesus told me to tell you he loves you. We weren't friends. We weren't people that talked. She didn't have my phone number. She just came in and told me this. And I have chills right now, even thinking about it, because that was my reaction back then. I didn't understand. I had just been hurt again in a damaging relationship. It was damaging for both me and the guy I was dating. And I was very unsure of where I needed to be. And debating on what my next steps were. And hearing that was the right time. So that was the beginning. And throughout college, I went on to my 4-year university. The guy I had been dating, we agreed to go our separate ways because it was best for both of us. And I never let go of that story, but I still really struggled with people because going to college, I met quite a few people who, again, I'm Christian. I'm a good person. I'm Christian was what they kept saying, but their actions didn't match with what I understood of what Christianity should be. So I was still struggling, and ironically, an old friend from high school went to school with me, and I saw, embodied what I expected Christianity to be. So I did get to spend some time with him and see, okay, this is what this should be. Why isn't, he's kind and understanding and thoughtful, and these conversations he has are not malicious, but he still makes his point in a beautiful way. And we dropped out of touch for a little bit, but again, we're still friends. I still see him doing the same thing. He's still who he is with Christ at the center of his life. And that was impactful as well. And I'd have to say the last experience before I finally met the people who helped me convert to finding a church, and ultimately the Catholic Church for me, was I was working at a drug rehab, which was in line with what my degrees were. It's a very difficult job because you are helping other people process a lot of really big emotions as well as detoxing. And there was a gentleman there who I was talking with him over morning coffee. I worked night shift, so we got up and had breakfast and coffee ready for everyone. And he asked, he's like, do you go to church? Do you believe in God? And I was like, not particularly, no. It's, not really in my wheelhouse. I'm good where I'm at. And he goes, God's not done with you yet. And that was another goosebump moment. It was right before I met my husband, about a year before I met him. So life just changed so quickly. And finally, my friend Lindsay, she's still one of my best friends. She's the godmother to my baby. She and her family really just embodied what it should be. We can still love everyone. We don't need to be hateful. We don't need to hurt people. We can disagree, and I can still love you. And these people, just 4 people over the course of a decade, maybe, just really, really changed my life.
And these passing interactions, and sometimes, because it sounds like you were close to like 2 of them, 2 out of the 4, is that correct?
Yes.
That just I don't know, if that doesn't light a fire under you, I don't know what would, because this idea that these 2 people, especially, who aren't even a part of your life, air quotes, a daily part of your life,
Mhm.
or these stories that you were bringing today is just like, my gosh, like,
Yeah.
what is it that God has for us that we are missing if we're not, like, open to this all the time? That's so convicting for me. It's
Yes.
like every time you feel that, like, Holy Spirit, like, "Say something, go over there, like,
Yeah.
talk to them." And every time you don't do it, oh my gosh, like, what is getting missed? Because of
Mhm.
course we have free will in these situations, just like the people that hurt you and the people that ultimately spoke the truth into your life had free will as well. And what
Mhm.
a blessing. Praise God for their yes to do that in the
Yeah.
moment. That
Yeah,
is
and
so
I've
cool.
been very lucky to recognize other experiences with
Mhm,
friends and people that really truly embody what Christ has asked us to be
mhm.
in loving our neighbor without judgment, but also speaking honestly.
Yeah.
And I can look back and there's quite a few.
Mhm,
But at the time I couldn't see them outside of their
mhm.
identity.
Yeah.
I just saw, oh, you're a Christian. We don't have anything to talk about.
Mhm,
And now I'm they're beautiful people
mhm.
that I missed opportunities with.
Yeah.
So, but I know that there's a reason this was all drawn out. This
Mhm,
plan over time, it slowly chipped away at my hurt and my pain
mhm,
and the little ice chip I had on my shoulder
mhm.
and allowed me to have a more open relationship with Christ
Yeah.
and with the people that showed me the way.
Yeah.
So,
So how has this affected, like, how you see yourself? So, like, prior to like, while you were agnostic,
yeah,
did you struggle with self-worth and things like that, or were you pretty much like, "I'm
absolutely.
good?"
No, absolutely. It was very much a fake it till you make it
Mm,
mentality for me when I was
yeah.
agnostic. I really struggled with determining what I deserved,
Hmm.
and it was not a positive light that I cast on myself.
Yeah.
I because I felt punished. I felt God
Mhm.
was punishing me, and I didn't know what I did
Mhm.
um, to deserve it. But I told myself that there's a reason. Like there's a reason He's punishing me, and I didn't realize it wasn't punishment outside of being separated from Him. It was
Wow.
my choice.
Mhm.
I chose to be separated from Him, and that was a life without Him that I don't want to go back to.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely. That's so similar to something that I'm walking through right now where it seems like I've had so many friends be like, "Oh my gosh, like you just cannot catch a break." And I'm like, "I know." And
yeah,
it's just so heavy sometimes, but you're right. And I think that that's where, a lot of people use that as evidence, like it sounds like you did when you were agnostic. Like, God is not good. He
hmm
doesn't care about me. This is a punishment. So I'm going to, do my own thing over here away from him. Where it really is our great opportunity then to draw closer to him. And I know
yes.
more recently in your life, since having discovered your faith, you encountered a lot of adversity again. So share with me about how that, like, more recent adversity was different than what you faced as a young person when God was in the picture with you.
So I know everyone knows what it was like when the pandemic hit their area.
Mhm.
Um, my the whole year started off horribly, to be honest.
Mhm.
My dad ended up in the hospital over New Year's, so started the year with him in the ICU on not an incubator, and he was intubated.
Oh, uh-huh.
Um, so he came out of that, and he's perfectly okay.
Good.
But that started things off with a bang. Um, the week that COVID hit our area, my son was in the hospital with a fever and dehydration and on IV fluids. I think for 5 days. Um, at this point, I was 7 months pregnant with our second. So everything that I had planned for our birth, obviously birth doesn't always go as planned anyway,
Mm-hmm.
was up in the air. We didn't know what policies were going to be. My stress level was through the roof. I worked in healthcare and didn't know what the virus could do to pregnant women or their children. So I was terrified, naturally. And as more things came out and we moved into what our new reality was going to be, I was suffering from what is very likely postpartum anxiety. Had a traumatic birth and didn't see my oldest for 6 days while I was in the hospital with our youngest. And I was trying to work on a master's program at the time, which was insane, but I was still trying to trudge through it.
Wow.
And the aftermath was a very dark place. I know the isolation alone was horrendous, on top of baby blues, postpartum, all of it. I was struggling and had some really wonderful friends who came and prayed with me, and that we cried, we talked. I got to tell my whole story and was told that I was still a good mom, even though things didn't go the way we had hoped. And I finally started pulling myself out of this pit. We hadn't been able to go to church because all the churches were closed. Services weren't available. Everything was virtual. And this disconnect it felt like a chasm. It was looking across the Grand Canyon and trying to reach. And that prayer with my friends, it was actually Lindsay and her mom, Robin, it rescued me and reminded me that that's the time that I need him the most. Those dark moments when I need to pray and communicate with him and just keep that relationship. When we didn't have the churches to go to connect with people in our community, that's when we really need him.
Yeah.
And he pulled me out of that pit and brought me back to my family, brought me back to my boys, my husband. He rescued me again.
Jesus. Praise God. That is, and I think that's just, I love the story of the 99 or the 100 sheep, the 99 sheep. He leaves the 99 to go find the one. Yep. And how when they're sheep, that doesn't make sense, but it makes sense when they're his kids. This is going to make me cry. Like, where it's just like, you wouldn't be like, oh, I have my 99 other kids. Like, who cares about that one? Like, you go find your child. And that is the way God pursues us. And I love how it is not an easy story, but like ultimately he is gentle with us in a lot of ways by really offering these really concrete moments of interaction. And I have them from my own life as well. And I was 8 months pregnant when the pandemic hit. So I feel your story so deeply. I did it too. So I'm there with you on that one. That was not something that you would ever want for anybody.
No.
Because it was really, really awful. I have scheduled C-sections always because I had a very crazy birth with my first. And so we didn't even know if they were going to be doing C-sections. That was how, like, what is even going on it was in early days. So that was definitely a whole thing. But the way that then other people speak into these situations for us, and I think that that's wherever you are at, listener, in this story, whether you are where Kendra was as a young person and like, I don't even know, I've been hurt, I don't believe Christians, it doesn't seem like God really cares. There's the hope in that side of the story. But I think if you're the person that's like, I'm in relationship with God, like he and I are tight, like we are moving forward together, the amount of opportunity there is to be open to speak into people, and the amount of access that God can have to people so concretely through us when we are surrendered to him, and when we also aren't like so attached to our view of ourselves that we are willing to like do something that could make you feel stupid. I think about that person in your college class who's like goes to you and is like, Jesus told me to tell you he loves you. Like, how many of us would be just like mortified, like to be like, person I don't know, I had a dream about you. And like, this feels so awkward. But when you're okay with who you are and you're really getting that identity from that relationship to begin with, who cares if people think you're weird? You know? And it's just a beautiful thing that person was in that place when that was what you needed in your story. I just love that.
Yep.
That is so beautiful. Well, thank you so much for chatting with me today, Kendra. It's been such a joy to talk to you. Share with us a little bit, before we go, share with us a little bit about your business that you have right now and what you're doing, because we're going to link to your business in the show notes. And I'd love for you to share about what that is.
Yeah, so my business was a huge leap of faith after God pulled me out of that pit last year. I started drawing and painting to process my emotions, and it turned into Sacred Mountain Studio. You can find it at sacred.mountain.studio on Instagram and on Facebook. And it is a whole plethora of beautiful things to bring comfort to your home. It's art prints, it's cards, and candles, diffuser bracelets. I also do baptism gift sets and rosary bracelets, which are my two biggest sellers.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Awesome. We've got it linked in the show description. So thank you so much, Kendra. I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day.
Thank you for having me, Jill.
Thank you so much for joining me on today's episode of the Authentic Uprising podcast. If you're watching on YouTube or listening on a podcast app, make sure that you hit subscribe so that you can get all of our updates automatically in your app on YouTube. And we also ask that you leave us a review or a comment. If you're in a podcast app, leave us a review. That helps us get seen by more people. And on YouTube, leave us a comment. Let us know what you loved from the episode and send it on to a friend. I am sure that you know someone who really needs the message in this podcast from today. I also encourage you to check out Pink Salt Riot. That is my company that sponsors this podcast. We have an incredible online shop full of all kinds of beautiful and unique Christian lifestyle goods. You can shop our whole line at pinksaltriot.com. I'll see you next week.